You've made the grade, and the State Department now has confidence in your ability to represent the United States abroad at an overseas post. You've spent the past several months in a classroom setting, working with your instructors and your colleagues to reach professional fluency in a foreign language. While congratulations are certainly in order, I want to ask a few questions. Are you ready to speak publicly? On behalf of the United States? In front of a large audience? In a foreign language? Now, because you've pursued a career in diplomacy, you likely already possess strong communication skills. This is a gift because most Americans find tremendous anxiety in public speaking. Considering that the typical first tour officer has little experience speaking publicly in a second or third language, you can imagine the levels of stress growing exponentially as you prepare for a presentation. Being a non-native speaker does not only add extra hurdles, but with dedicated practice and extra attention, you can tangibly alleviate nervousness. To come up with some tips and pointers to help you with your big presentations overseas, I've conducted research, polling dozens of fellow Foreign Service officers, international businessmen and women, and our local staff colleagues from embassies around the world. In hopes of keeping it simple, here's my 4-step approach to kissing your anxiety goodbye. All right, so it'll transition to know your audience, and know starts with the letter K. As a speaker, it is inherent that you determine the cultural expectations of your audience. For instance, while Americans expect good eye contact and meaningful gestures, these techniques may not come to connect the same way in your new country. Connecting with your audience means knowing what their expectations are for your speech. According to speech trainer John Bowe, using real-life stories can make your speech much more memorable, compelling, and engaging. But be selective about which stories you choose. For instance, one of our respondents said that an American speaker gave a talk about American football in Brazil, and the meaning was totally lost on the audience. Don't rely on the same heart-rending stories about your family friend's daughter in Dallas or your cousin in Dubuque. Instead, go with stories that are as close to home as possible. Are you headed to Cape Town or Kyoto? Well, find local stories that drive home the meaning of your subject in relatable local terms. Humor can also be an effective tool, but one you should only wield with absolute certainty that you will not cause any cultural faux pas. Several survey respondents relayed horror stories about well-intentioned attempts at humor gone horribly awry. We'll explain some methods to avoid comedy-related missteps a little bit later. Now, talking about knowing your audience, before I shot this video, I considered beginning by greeting you in several foreign languages, but then I imagined how far back in your head your eyes were going to roll watching me do something so wacky like that. We're going to now move to I for intentional. This is one reason why, in the days leading up to your presentation, you must be intentional about your preparation. Some of the great feedback that I received leading up to this presentation includes the following. One respondent suggested that you need to know your limits. Don't assume you can improvise in a foreign language simply because you can do so in English. A local staffer recounted the story of an officer crashing and burning during a presentation when they decided to wing it on stage. Another respondent recommended preparing for and practicing the presentation only in the language you're presenting in, and avoiding giving yourself mental shortcuts in English so you don't have to translate on the fly. One FSO explained that Slavic languages have 7 different case endings, and that one slight change can completely change the meaning of a sentence. The only way to avoid this pitfall comes through practice. And once you've polished and practiced your speech, you're ready to go. Just don't be too excited when you take the stage. Now we're going to go to the third step, which is speak slowly. I'll change on the camera. Almost as important as content is pace. If you speak too fast, you may appear nervous. Beyond showcasing your cool demeanor, speaking deliberately also manages expectations and trains your audience. Stanford University professor Matt Abrams writes in his book, Speaking Up Without Freaking Out, that, of course, non-native speakers have accents, and as an adult language learner, that's a fact of life. While continuing to work on your accent is a great way to improve your fluency, there's another trick that you can employ to help with audience comprehension: speaking slowly. Abrahams recommends starting with a sentence or two that are not vitally important to your presentation and speaking more slowly than you normally do. This gives the audience a chance to adapt to your accent and your manner of speech. You should also consider limiting the length of your sentences. This can minimize the chances of losing your place and therefore losing your audience. Now, while speaking slowly at the start of your speech is a neat hack, maintaining and improving your language skills are important, if not critical, parts of the job. All right, now we're transitioning to 4, which is the second S in KISS, support. I chose to make this the last point to tie things up with hope and optimism. Remember that you are not alone. If you're posted overseas, you're surrounded by incredible local staff members with whom you can practice and ask for guidance. How do I know that? Well, I polled several of them and they told me they consider teaching young officers cultural norms an important part of their jobs. Speaking with your local staff is a wonderful way to engage with them while continuing to improve your language skills after you leave the Foreign Service Institute. As diplomats, we're expected to make contacts within local communities. I can think of few better ways to build trust and rapport with a key contact than by asking them for advice ahead of a big presentation. By leveraging these local assets, you can pick up relevant local sayings and proverbs while also getting a handle on what's appropriate or inappropriate in terms of humor, content, or even gestures. And this technique also prevents you from relying too much on Google Translate and the potential pitfalls that come with that. And every graduate of FSI language training knows exactly what I mean. Sometimes it's challenging to admit that you need help, but showing humility is a wonderful way to connect with a large swath of people who are critical to your success abroad. And as an added benefit, they will help you improve your language skills in a fun, low-stress environment. All right, so now this is my conclusion. This is the last part. By definition, we represent our embassies, the State Department, or the United States of America. And when we do, we have an important message to share, often inspiring hope and always grounded in our American values. To ensure we effectively convey this message, it is important that we do our homework and practice before speaking to an audience overseas. And don't forget the awesome resources you have at your disposal in terms of local staff colleagues and foreign contacts. Several respondents to my survey reminded me that foreign audiences love when Americans use host country official languages, and they're very forgiving when you convey support through your effort and emotion. You need not be perfect, but you do owe it to your crowd and to yourself to show up prepared. Good luck with your new assignment, and if you begin to feel jitters before a presentation, just remember that you can always seal things with a kiss.